Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to yet one of the podcasts from the Exclusive series. I am Khushali Prasad, a student from XLRI Jamshedpur, PGDM General Management Batch of 2027. Today, we have with us Mr. Anup Gandhi, Managing Director at Alvarez Marsal. Our guest, a chartered accountant by profession, has spent at least around 3 decades in the industry. He started his career with PwC. Then he moved to the treasury functions at Philips Electronics India. After that, he moved into the chair function at MT Educare and also at the Pan India Food Solutions. He has been associated with Alvarez and Marshall for last 11 years, and he has been leading the CFO services and the transformation of support functions practice. So good evening, sir, and
Good
welcome to
evening. Thank you so much, Khushali.
XLRI. So how did it feel being back on a college campus after so long?
Well, actually, it's not after so long, Khushali, because I do a lot of campus recruitment every year. I'm there at IIT Mumbai campus. I'm there at IIM Ahmedabad campus. So, frankly, it feels good to be at different campuses because I think young talent is just becoming better and better by the day, and to associate yourself with them in different ways, I think it's always good.
That's great to hear, sir. So, starting with our first question, you have sat in almost every seat in finance: auditor, treasurer, CFO, and now you advise CFOs call when things are hard. So, of all of them, which seat taught you the most about judgment, and why that one?
I'll take it in two parts, Kushali, to be honest. I think I was very lucky that I learned the process of how you exercise judgment very early on in my career, thanks to my superiors when I started in audit in PwC. But frankly, if you ask me, when you get to leadership roles, that's truly when you realize how this is because you know that is when you start owning outcomes, and when you start owning the outcomes of the decisions that you make, that teaches you the most of how and what's the best way to exercise judgments. Otherwise, if you have somebody kind of looking over you all the time, it's easy to take a call and not worry about the outcome. So I would say ideally it started for me when I got into leadership roles.
Okay, understood. So PwC has been a great launchpad for you to take ownership of your decisions, and that is how you were able to refine your judgment skills early in the career itself. That is interesting. So the CFO chair and the advisor chair are interesting opposites. In one, you own the decision, and in the other, you can only influence it. So which is harder, and which taught you more about judgment under pressure?
Honestly, I don't think the two are different, Kushali, to be very honest.
Okay.
And the reason is, yes, I did mention, right, when you're a CFO in an organization, you're owning the outcome. But then again, if that outcome does not go right, you have the ability to sit and solve for it because you're still around.
Yes.
When we're playing interim CFO roles, yes, we might be there for a shorter period of time, but remember that I'm with a consulting firm tomorrow, and let's say something goes wrong out there 2 years down the line, it's the firm's reputation at stake. So I don't think it's any different in either ways. And again, the way we do work at A&M, when we do actually take up interim CFO roles, the whole idea is to take ownership from day one. So I think to me, it's pretty much on the same level.
Okay, understood. So we usually assume that more data means a better decision. But there has been a time where you had enough to decide and gathering more would have actually made things worse. So how did you know when to stop gathering data and actually take the decision and do the execution?
Interesting question, Koshali. I think we all go through a learning phase on this, right? So when in the younger days, the intuitive habits are that if I collect more and more information, I might I'm really kind of what I'm doing with that is I'm trying to justify my own answer.
Yes.
I think what you do learn over a period of time, it's not about justifying your answer. Is it about that if you gather more information, will it change your answer? And I think that's the point where you need to draw the equilibrium and say, is it even worth getting more data, right? If it's not going to change the answer, then it doesn't make any sense.
That's fair. Okay. So, finance today has more data than it has ever had: continuous close, live dashboards, and AI forecasting. Yet, CFO judgment seems to matter more, not less. Why do you think abundance raises the importance of judgment rather than lowering it?
Actually, you look at it 10, 15 years before when I was a CFO, yeah, this was absent. Most of my time was really spent on trying to just get information, trying to just get data. But that at least ensured that the focus was there on getting the right data. Today, when information is available in abundance, right? I mean, look at a CFO's dashboard of if we go in the morning and I get 15 KPIs, 30 KPIs, 40 KPIs. Honestly, the most important thing is to look at those three things where you're going to be able to drive a change.
Yes.
And that is where I think the focus is shifting for most leaders. And it's not just CFOs, but generally all leaders, right? Every leader in his or her own right is looking at tons of data today.
Yes.
Where do I cull out what is not important and just focus my energies on those three critical things that will help drive the change? I think that's what's very, very
So,
critical.
yeah. So, sir, you mentioned something about getting the right data. So, I understand that there is like a lot of data that you have to deal with, and out of that, you have to pick out data that is actually relevant for your decision making. So, which is also again related to judgment. So, on what basis are you able to extract the right data for you? Like, what are your parameters for filtering the data?
I would say two things, right? One is whenever you're trying to solve a problem, I think you need to be clear in your mind what is the outcome that you're looking for.
Okay.
Right? I mean, let's say, for example, if I have to bring it live, if I'm trying to do a functional redesign, an organizational redesign of a function, let's say, hypothetically, I'm trying to redesign the finance function of an organization. What is the objective behind it? Is it to cut cost? Is it to make sure that the function is able to serve more efficiently? I think once you know what is the outcome that you're, and by outcome, I don't mean the outcome people often misjudge as saying, I need to reduce the size of the finance organization. I need to just redesign the organization. That will happen. But what do you want to achieve out of that, right? That is very critical. And I think if you get that right, then you really know where you want to, what is it that you're trying to look for. Then you know that in the heat, in the midst of all of this, I really don't require these 7 or 8 things, right? Because they are not going to influence my outcome at the end of the day. So I think having that clarity is extremely important.
So goal setting is the most important criteria for filtering out data. Once you have the goal clarity.
Yeah, what
in
is it
mind,
that you want? What
and
is
the
it that you're
objective as
trying to,
well.
the objective?
Yeah.
What's the objective of doing what you're trying to achieve on the ground out there, right? I think I always advise young professionals that it's very important to know what is the outcome that you're going to achieve in any work that you're going to do. My own son is 18-year-old and he's interning right now, and that's the same thing I told him. Don't do work that is just given to you. You need to know
Yeah.
what is going to happen with that, because it's only after that that you'll figure out what is it that you want to do.
Yeah, so I actually also relate with that as well, because I want to understand the purpose behind every task that was like handed over to me during my work experience as well. So I believe that once you are able to understand the purpose and the objective behind and the impact as well behind everything that you do, that will help you perform better, and also you can sort out the data and make better decisions.
Absolutely. I mean, today it's all about cutting the noise.
Yeah,
Because
right.
there's so much data around you, and more often than not, I mean, you heard the saying, right? Empty vessel or too many hands, and then you just have more noise around you.
Yes.
Effectively. So
Okay, so moving on. As a CFO, was there a moment where the numbers pointed one way and your instinct pointed to other, and you went with instinct? How did that turn out, and how did it change how much you trust your gut?
I think that happens and has been happening for, I don't know, multiple occasions. But the one, let me think. If I have to think about one of the first key judgment occasions, right? I mean, judgment is something that I've been fortunate enough to have the ability to exercise over a period of time, even early on in my career, like I said. But I remember, when I was a CFO, and we were doing an acquisition, and the numbers were telling the truth. The numbers were saying that the EBITDA multiple that was being asked for was not justified. At the end of the day, the numbers are coming from a historical performance, right? And gut feel told me at that time that we needed that acquisition then. For us, it was a forward integration. Let me put it that way. It was in the education company that I was working with, and I had a set of students that I could kind of make sure that they got converted into doing this. So the ideology behind that was I was getting into a new course, I was acquiring the curriculum, I was acquiring the teachers. Yes, they may not have performed for me to give them a multiple, but they were never going to perform standalone. And it was about exercising the judgment of saying how my future will hold, right, on that front. And I literally had to sit and convince the whole board to actually go ahead with it, when typically most CFOs would probably say, no, we're paying too much for it. Fortunately, it turned out great for us because we actually went in with the assumption that we will be able to recover the monies that we had spent in about 24 months, and we recovered it in about 13 months. So honestly, that was great. I think in terms of what it taught me, Khushali, there are two things, right? One is, I think early on for most students, and I'm going back to you guys who are starting, or I know you've had experience of 3-4 years beforehand, but you're still young in your career in that sense. It's very important to have the risk-taking ability to take decisions and own the outcomes.
Yes.
That itself, whether the outcomes go right or wrong, the fear of failure should not lead you to taking those decisions and exercising judgment. You will only keep refining it with experience over a period of time.
Correct.
Some do it faster, some do it later, but you will get it right.
That's good to hear, sir. That was actually like very, I felt very relieved hearing that, because sometimes we also feel like we are not, sometimes we feel like are we taking the right step or not, and we try to be in that dilemma that whether I should do it or not, and we try to think of what will happen after 40 years, but instead we can just take the risk right now and go with it. So maybe that,
as long as you're doing all the right stuff around it, right? But it's important, because you need to be early on in your career in a position where you are allowed to use judgment. Only that's how you will refine your judgment. It's not a skill that can be taught at the end of the day.
Yes, sir. So moving on, in a boardroom, the number on the slide is only half the story, and the other half is who trusts it, who's threatened by it, and what people aren't saying. So how much of good CFO judgment is actually about reading the room rather than the data?
100%. I mean, I can think about every time I have walked into the boardroom as a CFO or as a consultant, as a partner, when I'm working on engagements, dealing with clients where we have multiple board meetings. The first thing is to remember that what a number means to you does not necessarily mean the same to somebody else. And in most cases, it is probably pointing a finger to somebody else.
Yes.
Right? And that's why it's very important, not just in the boardroom, but before you get to the boardroom, that you are able to read what is likely to come up, right? And I think you learn that with practice, and two, every time a situation changes, you just need to go back to the drawing board and do that. So it's about making sure that you do it even before you enter the boardroom.
Understood.
And so numbers, yes, they are there. And I mean, if I've walked into the boardroom more often than not, I've made sure that the numbers are not wrong, right? Okay, because otherwise the whole purpose is lost.
Yes. So my follow-up on that question, since we are talking about the cost and the threats and the numbers, so behind a cost optimization or restructuring recommendation are real people and real jobs. So when the data clearly says cut, how do you carry the weight of a decision that's right on the spreadsheet but hard on people?
Tough one, and you learn it over a period of time. But I think what's very important is that if the data is there and the data tells you that this is what is right, and it is backed with a proper judgment that it makes sense to kind of do it for the company, I think it's about how you execute the plan, right? And that is where compassion needs to be shown to people. Most often than not, even as a consultant, when we are working with companies to do that and execute that, everybody understands and realizes that it's not simply about saying, okay, here are the 30 people that I not need, and tomorrow here's your pink slip. Most of the times you don't do that, right? What you do is come out with a proper plan, you figure out a way where you can help these people to get jobs outside. So there are lots of things that you can do, but I think the most important thing in all of this is to come out with a proper plan which is going to take care of the individuals as well as of the interests of the company. Will you get it right all the time? Will it satisfy every single individual? I don't think that ever happens in any situation.
Right, correct. Okay. So obviously you cannot satisfy the interest of all the stakeholders every time. Like you have to prioritize the stakeholders and accordingly you can take decisions. So that also I believe depends on the organization goals and like the objective of the company.
Absolutely.
So moving on, you have done finance for both scrappy growth companies and large structured players. Judgment in a startup is fast, incomplete data versus a big company where there is slow, abundant data are almost opposite skills. Which is harder and does a great CFO need both?
I think first of all, absolutely yes. It doesn't matter whether, so yes, in a growing company or a startup, you're right, right? Data is less. It's shabby.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
You are using your judgment to take a decision, but in most of those scenarios, if something goes wrong, you do get the chance to correct, because you're dealing with, let's say, the outcome of that is not going to probably necessarily stop the company, or the loss that's going to happen is not going to be that big. When you work with larger companies, yeah, I mean, decision making needs to be quick, and it needs to be, again, that boils down to the point that I was making, which is you need to cut the noise, get to the real data and take a decision. But honestly, if you ask me, both are equally critical, and I don't think one follows the other. As a good CFO, you need to understand both, because it's quite possible that the outcome of what you're trying to do in a large company might be a similar outcome in a smaller company, and vice versa, right? So I think it's equally important to have both the skill sets at the same point in time and not necessarily one following the other.
Okay, understood, sir. So we cannot say that a CFO only requires the skills that are required for like transforming a big company or like a large scale company. Like you need to be able to transform the finances or the operations or the design of a small scale company as well.
And think
Both
about
of
it,
them are required.
a smaller company could be a business unit within a larger company, and that might require
Yes.
transformation. So it doesn't really change the process.
So both go hand in hand anyway.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you are leading finance transformation and also like the transformation of other support functions. And that is at a time when Gen AI can generate almost any analysis instantly. So where do you personally draw the line between what a machine should decide and what still requires the human CFO in the room?
I think it's pretty simple, Khushali. Anything that is repeatable, anything that doesn't cost you the outcome, and I keep going back to the word outcome, right? Because to me, everything is driven by outcome.
Yes,
So you take any task, and if the outcome of that, if it's a repeatable task, and the outcome of that is something that's not going to lead to, significant errors or significant problem statements and can be corrected very quickly, yes, I think some of it is already happening today with the machines. It will just get better over a period of time. When it comes to scenarios where, it boils down to trust, it boils down to those elements which data can't solve for, or where you're looking at, a process which in your company might be repeatable, but in mine it's not, because I'm running 6 different businesses. I want to be careful on that front,
Correct.
right? Where I think human judgment will start playing a bigger role than machine, because at the end of the day, I'm not an AI guy, but I apply AI in all my projects, but I'm not an AI expert. And what I do understand is that everything then revolves around the quality of data and revolves around the pattern recognition, right? So
Correct.
I think if we understand that element behind AI, then it's easier to understand and adapt AI eventually where it needs to be.
Okay, sir. That was actually an interesting viewpoint. So, talking from my personal angle as well. So, if I talk about my background, so I also have around consulting experience of around 4 years. So, coming from a consulting and audit transformation background myself, where AI accelerators now do a lot of the first pass analysis, what's the one habit you would tell someone early in that career to protect so that tools sharpen their judgment instead of replacing it?
I recently, and I'll use it with a live example actually, interesting question. I have an intern that's joined us very recently, and she's actually working on one of my projects. And the first habit was to go and say, okay, if the work that, I mean, obviously I didn't give her the work, but somebody else in my team had given her some work to do. And the first thing she did was put that into Claude, came
Yes.
up with an answer. I think that's where most people tend to make the mistake. What I would say is what is very important is make your own judgment first, then ask AI to verify that judgment of yours. Because the moment Claude will give you, or any other platform will give you an answer, more often than not, as individuals, our mind is tuned to then trying to prove that right rather
Right.
than the other way around. Here, if you've given an output or an outcome which you think is the case, and then ask AI to verify it, it's easier for you to figure out, I've missed this, I've missed that. So
Maybe if we put anything on Claude directly without using our judgment, there is a possibility that AI is going to reinforce its viewpoints on us, and we might not be
more
really.
often than not.
Yeah, so it might happen quite often then. Okay. So also talking about from the audit perspective, so we have talked a lot about the consulting. So if I talk about the controls and the internal controls of an organization, they are supposed to remove judgment to make the things right, to make the right thing automatic. But over controlling can kill good decision just as fast as no controls. So how do you know when a process needs a rule versus when it needs a person to just judge it?
I think, in a way, I answered this question a couple of questions earlier. Like I said, right? Think about it as a task which is repeatable.
Correct.
It's going in the same fashion, the same way. Easier to put controls around that, right? And if I have to use that as an example, think about a very simple piece like, you have a delegation of authority that is kept in place for, let's say, a procure to pay process. Right?
Correct.
Everybody wants a three-way match
Yes.
to happen.
Yes.
And now, let's say you're doing it in a company which has one line of business. So you're doing it for one company.
Yes.
Right? Lot easier, as you
Yes.
can imagine, to place the controls and decide your DOA, as
Yes,
the case
sir.
may be.
Yes.
Think about if you're trying to centralize it for a group which has 10 different businesses, different size and scale, different nature of businesses.
Correct.
Where do you draw the line? That's where you will have to start thinking about that judgment call coming into play and saying,
Yes.
how are you going to make this work while protecting the central
Yes.
aspect
Correct.
of
So
it. Right?
as the organization become larger and more complex, maybe the judgment has a more role to play over than rather than
Anything
having
which
a
is
lot of
simple,
strict controls.
straightforward, happens in the same fashion, easier to drive it. As they start getting more complex, as scenarios start changing, you will need human judgment.
Yes, definitely agreed. So then moving on. So talking from the so since you are here in an MBA college and you might be coming here soon, like you go to other colleges as well for recruitment. So you have interviewed people across decades. What's the most common mistake candidates make that quietly costs them the role? And the one thing you would tell every MBA student walking into their first placement interview?
More often than not, I feel when people walk into interviews, they make the mistake of trying to give the right answer. Nobody's expecting a right answer.
Okay.
I mean, when you're asked questions, typically when you walk into a consulting firm, you might be given a case. You might be
Yes.
asked to say, okay, how would you do this? I have seen most of the times people trying to see what's the right answer. Nobody's trying to test the right answer, because if you could solve that in 10-15 minutes, then why even did you need to do your MBA, right? I mean, you'd be
Right.
sitting somewhere at the top. People want to understand your process. People want to understand the way you think. People want to understand, I definitely want to understand, do you ask the right questions?
Yeah.
Because
Correct.
for solving problems, you need to ask questions.
Yes.
I think that's one. The second, for me personally, and somehow it's gone well with the motto of the way we work as a firm, is I believe you need to have honesty when you answer. There's no compulsion to answer every single question if you don't know the answer to that question or you don't know what it is intended to be. I rather have someone tell me, I'm sorry, I don't know, or I'm not aware, rather than trying to give me faff all around. Because at the end of the day, that is what you will take to the client. At A&M, we are very okay with telling the client in the boardroom, sorry, I don't have an answer today, but I'll get back to you soon.
Okay. So approach and honesty. These are the things that are actually judged during an interview.
Most
For
of the
for
times.
most of the
Most of
placement
the
campus
times.
interviews.
Most of the
Okay.
times.
What are your thoughts on the 1-year MBA programs in India? What are your expectations from the students, and what value addition do you see a 1-year MBA adding to the career profile of students?
I think, look, and you and I were just talking. I asked you this question, right, Khushali?
Yes.
Why did you go for a one? In a way, you answered that as well. To begin with, I would say, I think if you're doing your MBA as a fresher or with a bare minimal experience, I think a 2-year program probably makes more sense. If you're doing an MBA, 4 or 5 years of experience post your work, a 1-year program, yes, you're there. But I think for me, it's not a question of whether a 1-year or a 2-year program is more or less relevant. I think it is about how these programs will have to change in the coming times to equip the younger generation with the new ways of working, right? If it truly happens, like everybody's saying, that AI will take over a lot of things. Now, whether that happens 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, time will tell, and to what extent. But it will, right? It will to some or the other extent, whether it will achieve 100% of what people are talking or whether it will achieve 50%. Even if it achieves 50, I think organizations will rethink and will need to rethink because everybody will invest into AI. For me, investing into AI is not about investing into the code that you're going to write or the agentic AI program that you're going to bring on board, but to make it successful, it's also going to be about how are you going to think about the people in your organization, what skill sets will they need to bring in. That itself will change. A lot of the younger folks today were sitting and doing data analytics, which AI will take over, by the way, for sure. The extent to which it will take over and the magnitude to which it is able to drive right answers, yes, time will tell, the quality of data will tell, it will change from place to place. But the role will change. And because that role will change, students who are walking into fresh jobs will need to be adaptive to what that role needs to be, and then education will need to change, right? So anything, to me, AI, if it does go down the path of what people are saying it can achieve and will achieve, then to me it's nothing short of a revolution, and that means everything before that will have to undergo progressive change in that fashion.
Correct. Thanks a lot for your input, sir. So with that, we have come to an end of the podcast. On the behalf of the entire PGDM General Management batch, thank you for taking out the time for this podcast, and also for everyone for joining us. This is Khushali Prasad signing off. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Khushali. Pleasure.